Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. Carl Jung. Imagine this for a moment. What if the most dangerous part of a person was not their anger, not their cruelty, not even their hatred, but something far more subtle, something they hide, even from themselves? Jung believed there is a silent sign, buried deep within, that destroys more lives than open aggression ever could. It is the denial of one's own shadow, and when ignored, it controls a person in ways they cannot see, turning them into something far more dangerous than they appear. This is what Carl Jung warned us about when he spoke of the most dangerous sign in a person. And in this video, we will uncover what that really means, how it shows up in the people around you, and what you must do to recognize and protect yourself from it. If you find depth and meaning in this kind of exploration, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the insights we share here, because to understand others, you must first confront the truth within yourself. Carl Jung's warning about the most dangerous sign in a person was never about what most people fear on the surface, the loud anger, the obvious aggression, or even the cruelty that is easy to recognize and defend against. Those things are visible, and visibility makes them less dangerous, because at least you know what you are dealing with. The true danger, Jung argued, lies in repression. The refusal to acknowledge the darker impulses, the denial of the shadow within. When someone insists they are only good, only moral, only pure, they cut themselves off from the truth of their own humanity, and in doing so, they create a hidden force inside that grows unchecked. Jung believed that this unconscious darkness does not simply vanish because we ignore it. Rather, it waits, gathering strength, until it emerges in ways the person cannot predict or control. This is why the seemingly gentle friend, the one who prides themselves on never getting angry, can one day erupt with a destructive fury that shocks everyone, including themselves. Or why the person who loudly condemns others for moral failings, dishonesty, selfishness, cruelty, so often reveals, eventually, that they are guilty of the very same sins they denounce. These are not accidents or hypocrisy in the shallow sense. They are the direct consequences of refusing to see one's own shadow. Repression creates blind spots, and those blind spots become the most dangerous thing about a person. The anger that is admitted can be worked with, even healed, but the anger that is denied festers, turning into poison. The jealousy that is recognized can be managed, even transformed into ambition, but the jealousy that is denied becomes hatred disguised as righteousness. Jung warned that those who think themselves completely virtuous, who never question their own motives, are the ones most likely to harm others, because their shadow acts without their awareness. And what makes it so threatening is not just the damage they do to others, but the way they remain convinced of their own goodness while doing it. They may betray a friend, yet still believe they are loyal. They may inflict cruelty, yet frame it as justice. They may project their own flaws onto others, condemning what they themselves cannot bear to admit. This projection is one of the clearest signs of a repressed shadow. When someone seems obsessed with pointing out darkness in the world, but never turns the same light inward, it is as if they build an enemy outside to avoid facing the enemy within. Jung saw this pattern everywhere, in individuals and in societies, and he understood its destructive power. The more a person denies their shadow, the more dangerous they become, not because they are consciously evil, but because they are unconsciously ruled by forces they refuse to name. This, then, is the hidden sign. Not rage, not violence, not hatred in the open, but the mask of perfect goodness that conceals a storm underneath. And if you look closely, you will see it in daily life. In the friend who smiles too much and agrees with everything until the mask slips and resentment pours out. In the leader who promises purity and virtue while secretly indulging the very behaviors they condemn. In the colleague who positions themselves as the most ethical, yet spreads cruelty behind the scenes. These are not random contradictions. They are the shadow at work, and Jung's warning was clear. The person who claims to have no darkness is the one most controlled by it. To recognize this truth, is not to lose hope in people, but to see them more clearly and to protect yourself from the harm that denial always brings. To protect ourselves from the hidden dangers that Jung spoke of, we must begin with the most difficult and uncomfortable step, looking inward. It is always tempting to believe that the problem lies in others, that the darkness exists only outside of us, but the truth is that the most powerful safeguard is awareness of our own shadow. The shadow, as Jung described it, is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a part of us that we must recognize. It holds the impulses, emotions, and instincts we prefer not to admit: envy of another's success, resentment toward someone who seems more loved, selfish cravings for power or attention, even the subtle wish to see someone stumble so we can feel superior. Most people bury these feelings because they believe that ignoring them makes them disappear, but repression only gives them strength. What we deny does not vanish, it hides, waits, and eventually emerges in distorted, destructive ways. Jung's great insight was that to live unconsciously with a denied shadow is to walk through life as both victim and danger, blind to the forces pulling your strings. The moment you become aware of these inner forces, you are no longer entirely controlled by them. Awareness itself begins to transform them. This is why the first act of protection is not judgment of others, but the courage to say, yes, envy lives in me, resentment lives in me, selfishness lives in me. The admission softens their grip, because what is brought into consciousness loses its ability to ambush you. Yet protection does not end with self-awareness. It also requires vigilance in how we relate to others. Jung warned that when someone appears too flawless, too virtuous, too perfectly balanced, we should be cautious. Absolute perfection is rarely genuine. Often it is a mask that conceals unresolved darkness. The person who never seems angry may be consumed by rage beneath the surface. The one who preaches constant purity may be running from desires they cannot accept. The neighbor who appears endlessly kind may harbor hidden cruelty, unacknowledged even to themselves. This is not about becoming cynical or distrusting everyone you meet, but about remembering that the human psyche is complex, and no one is free from shadow. When you encounter someone too perfect, ask yourself what may lie beneath. It is often the people who deny their shadow most strongly who are at risk of being possessed by it unconsciously, because whatever is disowned grows in power. Recognizing this dynamic does not mean you condemn them. It means you stay alert and protect yourself from being blindsided. Practical tools make this awareness real. One of the simplest yet most profound is to write. When you feel anger, envy, or selfishness stirring inside you, instead of pretending it is not there, put it on paper, give it words, give it shape. The act of writing transforms what is amorphous and threatening into something you can see, hold, and reflect on. It no longer has the same power to erupt uncontrollably because you have faced it consciously. Another crucial practice is watching for projection. Projection is what happens when we deny something in ourselves and then accuse others of it. A person who cannot admit their own arrogance may constantly complain about how arrogant everyone else is. Someone who represses their own dishonesty may become obsessed with catching others in lies. Jung described projection as one of the most dangerous tricks of the psyche because it keeps us blind to our own flaws while making us harsh judges of the world. To protect yourself, notice when your judgments of others are especially strong, emotional, or repetitive. Ask yourself, is this really about them, or is it about me? Could this be a mirror of something I refuse to acknowledge in myself? That simple question can change everything, because it shifts the spotlight back to where it belongs, inside you. This process is not easy. It requires humility to admit that the darkness we fear in others also lives within us. It requires courage to write down ugly thoughts without erasing them. It requires honesty to pause before condemning someone else and to consider that perhaps we are seeing our own reflection. But the reward is immense. Freedom. Freedom from being unconsciously ruled by forces we do not understand. Freedom from projecting our pain onto others. Freedom from the naivety of believing that evil is always out there and never in here. Awareness becomes armor, not because it makes you flawless, but because it makes you whole. And wholeness, Jung taught, is the true goal of psychological growth. To integrate the shadow is to stand more firmly in reality, to see with clearer eyes and to act with more authenticity. When you know yourself, your light and your dark, you are less likely to be deceived by appearances in others, less likely to be manipulated by hidden forces, and more capable of living with depth and truth. Protection, then, is not about building walls against the world, but about cultivating such radical honesty within that the world's shadows cannot easily hook into yours. This is the path Jung laid before us, a path of courage, humility, and self-knowledge, where every acknowledgement of darkness is, paradoxically, a step toward greater light. In the end, we arrive at the core truth that Carl Jung tried to warn us about. The greatest danger within us is not the anger or flaws we openly display, but the hidden shadow we refuse to acknowledge. It is the unspoken envy, the quiet hatred, the selfish desires we bury, that shape our actions in ways we do not even realize. As Jung once reframed it, the most dangerous things are those we refuse to see in ourselves. And this is where real self-protection begins, not in building walls against others, but in shining a light on our own darkness, because only then do we take away its power. When you face your own shadow, you disarm it, transforming it into a source of awareness instead of destruction. But when you deny it, when you pretend it does not exist, you become its prisoner, and that is when you turn into the very danger you fear, without even knowing it.